Hey guys, we are back updating the power rankings for Australian Survivor Brains versus Brawn 2 following the 7th week of episodes, which at this point we are now on a 2 episode a week schedule, which obviously drives out the season a bit. Though even with that, we still have some interesting stuff to get into, but we have 8 people to talk about. As with some more time, let's get into the video. So starting off at number 8, we have the first booth from this week, and here we have Logan, who ends up being taken out in a pretty strange fashion here, where the next time on from last week teased that this episode was potentially going to be a rock draw, and we kind of got that, where it was a 4-4 situation, it was a deadlock, and we saw them almost going to rocks here, only for Logan to essentially give up her game and allow Kaitlyn Morgan to vote her out, which is obviously kind of lame and anticlimactic, as we never had a rock draw in Australian Survivor, and it would have been cool to see it play out here. It was also funny watching Kristen's Juravilla video, where she pretty much admitted that her, Kaitlyn Morgan, didn't know what rocks meant, and they thought that the tiebreaker was a fire making challenge, which was pretty funny there as well. But even so, I feel like Logan's downfall here made a lot of sense. I feel like by this point in the season, she was pretty unlikely to win. I feel like there was a lot of negativity with her and a lot of setup for her being this emotional player. And I think for her to go out in this way of essentially caring too much about her allies to subject them to the rock draw is kind of fitting here. And if we're talking about Logan more generally, she was one of the bigger characters of the season. Definitely someone who I looked at as a contender for a lot of the season. Though I think by the end of it, she kind of fell off the rails, and by the end, I was pretty certain she was going to have a downfall here, and obviously she's now out of the game. So because of that, she's here at number 8. Now moving on to number 7, and we have the other boot from this week, and here we have Kristen. And again, Kristen going out in a spot also makes a lot of sense. I didn't really see her as a contender to win this season, and I felt like her boot episode felt pretty predictable, where I was pretty certain for a lot of the episode that she was going to go home. We're even with this talk about Zara flipping. I just didn't think it was going to pan out here, and her going out makes a lot of sense. And again, Kristen was just kind of fine on the season. Didn't really pop as a character too much, and while she got some focus here and there, I never truly saw her as a contender. And I do think she came off as a pretty competent player, someone who seemed to be in the majority for enough of the game, though at the same time, I just don't think she really had the killer instinct. And while her Juravilla video was somewhat notable, with Polly really digging into her, I just never really saw her as the greatest character in the world. But like Logan, she is now out of the game as well, to where she's here at number 7. And with that, we have 6 people left in the game to talk about, and as usual, I'll be ranking them based on how lucky I think they are to win the game, based on their edit and current game position. By number 6, the person I believe is the least likely to win from this point on is still Morgan. And Morgan's in a very similar boat to where she was for pretty much the entire post-merge, barely getting any content on the show, no confessionals this week. And at the same time, there's all this talk about Kate and Morgan being this duo and being too attached to AJ, and there's talk about breaking them up. And I'm actually surprised Morgan's still in the game, as I said last week that I felt like she would have been a pretty likely victim of the rock draw had it come down to it, especially with her side being down in numbers. And while she does survive that, I just have no faith in her to actually get towards the end. And while I think she could definitely win a jury vote if she were to get to the end, I just don't think she's getting there, especially with how bad her edit has been. And because of that, she's still at the very bottom here at number 6. Now moving on to number 5, and we have the same person in this slot compared to last week, and here we have Zara. And Zara's in a very similar boat as well, someone who has been getting more content compared to Morgan, but has not been portrayed in a particularly positive light, where we saw in this latest episode that she was talked about as this potential swing vote that could have flipped the game against AJ, only for her to stick by the graduate. And you even have Kristen in her final words talking about how annoyed she was at Zara for not flipping the game. And I'll allude to this in my next video, which is actually going to be my jury scenarios video. But I actually think Zara is pretty primed to be a losing finalist, if you ask me, based off her edit, based off her perception in the game. I just don't really see her getting to the end in a winning position. Now, mind you, I think I have more faith in her to get to the end compared to Morgan, which is why I do have her one spot higher. But I just don't think she's going to win a jury vote by the end of it. And I feel like with the edit not really being on her side, I can't really have her any higher than number 5. Now moving on to number 4, and we actually have the same person in this slot compared to last week as well, and here we have Kate. And Kate's in a very similar boat. I feel like she's someone who, while she has gotten some content here and there, I just don't think she's going to get to the end. Now I do think she would have more respect on a jury compared to Zara, but I also think she's just not going to get there, especially with all this talk about Kate and Morgan being this duo. I just feel like it's going to be very hard for them to get to the end together. And with Kate having already been discussed as a potential target, it wouldn't shock me if Kate gets taken out relatively soon regardless. And I just feel like she's just not a major character in the season. I feel like she's not someone who is being propped up to win, especially this late in the season. So I find it hard to see how Kate wins the season from this point on, which is why she's here at number 4. Now moving on to number 3, and we have the big character of the season, and here we have AJ. And I think my view of AJ has not changed all that much. I think AJ is still someone who is clearly meant to be like the big final boss of the season, someone who is propped up as a big player, someone who's been getting a bulk of screen time on the season, and also someone who I think will probably be cut before the end. Now, I do think his actual game up to this point has been pretty good, and as I'm going to be talking about in the next video, I actually think the jury would respect him if he got to the end. However, I think he is also someone who will probably come up just short. I think Miles will probably win the battle against him by the end of it. And through that, I don't think AJ is as likely to win. But at the same time, I think he definitely has more of a shot of winning from a pure game standpoint compared to the people we already talked about, which is why I do have him one spot higher at number 3. Now moving on to number 2, and I'm not going to lie, this entire video has been pretty stagnant when it comes to the rankings. And number 2, we had the same person yet again, and here we have Kaitlyn. And I think this was actually a pretty fine week for Kaitlyn as well, where he has been getting more positive content as of late, and there's definitely at least some setup to him being like the surprise winner, where we see him once again winning 2 immunities in a row. He now has 5 individual immunities, which I believe is tied for the record on Australian Survivor, and also tied with the record on Survivor US. And with there still being a few rounds left in the game, he could definitely break that record by getting a 6 immunity, which would be pretty cool there. And I do think he is someone who I think has been getting good enough content to where it's not impossible to see how he could win the game. But at the same time, I just feel more confident in the number 1 person, which is why I do have Kaitlyn here at number 2. And now, at number 1, the person I believe is the most likely to win Australian Survivor Brains versus Brawn 2 at this point is still Miles. Now, it's kind of weird as I don't think Miles' edit has been that spotless, as even in this post-merge, he still has gotten some negativity here and there with all this talk about him being on the bottom. You have him once again reiterating this jungle rat to rat king story where it feels like he's just going from the top to the bottom over and over again. And each time he does, he keeps like bringing up the storyline like as if we haven't seen it before. And I do find it kind of funny in that regard. But I still think Miles is the rooting interest of the season. I still think we're meant to be looking at Miles as this underdog who is going from this jungle rat to this rat king. And I do think Miles will eventually get a 1-up on AJ. And I think Miles will probably cut AJ by the end of it to win the game. And I feel like with this week not really changing my view on a lot of these people, I feel like it makes sense that the ranking would remain around the same. So because of that, I still have Miles here at number 1. And there we go. That'll do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. Really helps with the channel. Now, I may or may not do a power ranking again next week, where depending on whether we're at the final 5 or the final 4, I'll see where we stand at this point and whether another video is warranted or not. However, I will be also making my jury scenarios video this week where I'll be talking about like the final 2 combinations and how I think those will play out. So be on the lookout for that. And on top of that, I am covering Survivor 48 and The Amazing Race. I'm on Patreon and a YouTube membership, so if you want to consider supporting the channel, you can do so by clicking the link in the description. And you can also join the Discord server by also clicking the link in the description. There's a lot of stuff coming your way, but for now, that is a video. See ya.